Hey everyone, so I'm super excited about this tutorial for the Book of Spells from Hocus Pocus, just in time for the new movie. So I've got some white fondant. Now I've baked a rectangle cake. I chose to do red velvet, and I've ganached that. I will put a link in the description box to a ganaching tutorial, um, just in case you don't know how to do it, but I'm sure you're more than comfortable in covering a cake in ganache or in buttercream. So to start the cake off, we're going to roll out some white fondant. We're going to leave it a little bit thick, and this is just going to be for the pages in the book. So I'm straightening the bottom part of this. This is what's going to sit flush with the board. And then I'm just going to wrap this around 3 sides of the cake, so the 2 shorter ones and the longer one. Now I am struggling for space with this cake, it was quite big, so I will be showing you the parts of the cake as I am working on it. I'm trying to save up some money to get the garage converted so that I can film proper tutorials from all different angles, but this is all I could manage at the moment. So I'm just taking my smoother and I'm just going to smooth over the edges. Now it doesn't have to be too neat because we are going to make it quite rough, just to make it look a bit like some pages in a book. But I'm just pushing it down, making sure that it's stuck down to the sides and just making sure that it covers the whole of the side as well. So that's what it should look like so far. So this bit I had to film on my phone, so it's just a little bit smaller than the rest of the video. But here I've got one of the Flexi Smoothers and I'm just going back and forth just along the edge of the page. Then I'm going to go in with my Dresden tool, the thicker side. Again, I'm just going back and forth with this to create the pages. The reason I'm using a few different tools is to get different thicknesses of pages, just to give it a bit more of a realistic look. And then once I've done this, I've gone in with my scriber needle, and again, this is just going to help give it a more realistic look. So just back and forward with that. And so you should have something that looks similar to this when you've been all the way around. And then I've taken some brown fondant and in that I've just mixed some black, and you can see that I've not mixed it properly and I've got this kind of like old leathery type of texture where there's sort of like lighter shades, darker shades. And this is just going to be what we're going to use for the cover of the book. So again, just rolling this out, not too thick. But we don't want it thin where the sides would drop off the side of the cake. So we kind of want it to be sort of like I would say maybe about 1/4 of a centimetre in thickness. And I'm just going to trim off just that edge there. And you can see how thick the fondant is. Just popping that to one side while I get the cake. And I'm just going to wet with some water, so we've got something to stick it to. The bit that I just cut, we'll put that on the side of the board first, and then we'll just wrap the rest of the book over. And I'm just using my hand and my smoother just to soften that out and get rid of any lumps or bumps. Again, it doesn't have to be too neat because the book is quite old and it does look a bit leathery. So any lumps and bumps that are in there would just add to the character of the book anyway. We're going to chop off the excess. And then I'm just going to go around the sides of the cake with a pair of scissors and I'm just going to roughly chop, just so I'm slightly over the edge of the cake. I'm just going to take the excess off. Now don't worry if it's a bit jagged, we can go in and straighten that up later on. And I'm going to do the same with the other sides of the cake too. And then just go over with my smoother, just making sure everything's nice and neat. So the first part of the book we're going to make is the fingers that seem to be around the edge of the cake. So from what I could see from images on Google, there is 5 fingers. So I will show you how to make one. They're only rough fingers, it doesn't have to be too neat. So we've rolled a sausage, we've divided it into 5. Using the flat side of the Dresden tool, we're going to push in a nail bed. So you can see I've pushed it in and I've just lined it underneath the bottom. And then with a tiny bit of fondant that's a bit of an oval shape, we're going to push that on, and that's going to create our nail. And then just pushing down the sides and flattening the top a little bit. And we're just going to add in some detail with some little lines across where the bendy bit of the finger would be. And then I'm just pinching around the bottom just to make it look a bit more like it's been severed. And then with a thick bristled brush, I'm just dusting over everything just to give it a little bit of texture. So here's my 5 fingers. We're going to put these on the side of the book. So just a little bit of water. You don't want too much water because otherwise they will slide down, because they are not heavy, but they would be heavy to hold on the side of the book. So it's just a little bit of water that I'm putting on here. And then I'm just going to stick them on the side like this, trying to get them evenly spaced, like so, and roughly all about the same height. And then next I've got some tin foil, and I'm just going to scrunch the tin foil up, and then we're just going to use this to texturize the top of the book. So I'm just going all over, pressing different, different sort of like, I don't want to say strength, but sort of some parts I'm pressing lightly, some parts I'm pressing a bit more heavily. So next we're going to work on the snake that is on the front of the book towards the spine. So I'm going to use the brown fondant that I've got, and we're going to cut out a strip of fondant that's maybe just over 1 centimetre wide, maybe 1.5 centimetres wide. And this is going to run up the spine of the book. So once we've done that, we're going to roll a long sausage, and then we're going to texturize it with or stipple it, should I say, with the tin foil and a firm brush. And then with the long sausage that we've rolled, that's thinner at one side than it is at the other, the thicker side, we are going to turn that into the snake's head. So what we're going to do is we're going to pinch it together and push it down. So I'm pinching and I'm pushing, and that's just going to create sort of like a rough snake's head. And then we're just going to wiggle that up, the bit that we just texturized. I'm just going to make it a little bit wiggly, and we're just sticking this down with a little bit of water, and then we're going to place that on the spine of the book, like so, and just going in and texturizing the top of the snake as well. So next we're going to roll another snake. So similar as before, with the head you're going to pinch and flatten at the top. And this is going to be sort of like the corners of the book. Now it's a bit of a weird shape to have to make, but basically we're going to wrap it round and go underneath the head like that, and then we're going to wrap around again. This is me trying to figure out how to do it. We're going to tuck the tail of the snake through when we've wrapped it round, and then we're going to create a loop at the bottom and pass the tail again through the top of the loop on the right hand side. Like so. And then you're going to do that again for another one. Just leave it to one side to firm up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take sort of like an oval, a rough oval shape of fondant, and we're going to concertina it. So just with a brush, we're going to create these folds, and we're going to do 3 of those. So we're going to do 3, and then we're going to pinch it together at the top, pop it to one side. Again, we're going to do the same thing, and these are going to go just sort of like at the side of the snakes. This is what the snakes' mouths are going to be resting on. So we're going to attach these to the book first. So you can see I'm just placing it where I want it to go, trimming off the excess, and then we're just going to push that down and into place, and then follow it up with a snake. The snake's covering that join, the thicker part of the join that's at that side that the head's resting on. And so you can see the book's starting to take shape now. So with a little bit of water, we're just going to wet the sides, and then we're going to press this down with the Dresden tool, the thicker side and the flatter side. And you can see I'm just pushing it down ever so slightly, and it's just blending out that line. Now again, it doesn't have to be too neat because we're going to colour everything, you won't see it anyway, but it's just to get rid of that ridge. A circle for the eye socket, and then we're going to make the eye. So I've just got some white fondant. I'm pressing it down against the bench, but still keeping the sides quite rounded. We're going to take some light green fondant, and we're going to pop that in the middle. Just going to roll it into a circle and press that in. And then I've got some dark green gel paint. We're going to paint around the edge, like so. And then we're going to start to pull that colour in. So we'll take the excess colour off the brush, wet it with some water, and you can see I'm just pulling that colour in and around. Now I've got some super white powder. I've just mixed it with a little bit of green, and I'm going to go in again. This is just going to add a little bit of depth to the eye. And then again with some sort of like yellowy greens. I think this was like gooseberry or something like that I used. And then we're going to go back in with the darker green and just re-go over the edges and just bring a bit of extra colour into the eye, just to break up all the light that we've put in there. Just a little bit on your brush to go around the edges, and then we're just going to pull that through. Like so. And you're just going to keep working this until you're happy with the colour that you've got. And then once you're happy, we're going to take some black fondant, roll a small circle, and we're going to pop this not in the middle but just slightly up from the middle of the eye. And then add a little bit of white just for a reflection of the eye. And then the circle that we made, we're going to pop it in there, like so. And then we're going to take some of the brown fondant, and we're going to create sort of like the casing of the eye, I guess like the eyelids that would be there. And we're going to use our Dresden tool just to blend that in and blend it down. Just smoothing as we go. We're going to add a top lid as well, using exactly the same methods as what we've just used for the lower lid. But this one, we're going to flatten at one side, and we're going to overlap it to the eyelid that's already there. Like so. And then again, we're going to smooth that out. Just add in a little bit of water to the end of the Dresden tool, and it should help blend in that line perfectly. Now when I ever think about this book, I always think of it sort of like looking up and off to one side. So that's how I've done my eye. You can have it so it's looking straight ahead, or you can have it so it's looking to one more corner. But this is just how I envisage it from the movie. And we're just going to smooth out that join so it's not as noticeable. And then we're going to create sort of like a little bit of a dint in the corner of the eye. And this is more so that when we go in with the shading, we can sort of like really colour that a darker colour. So then it's kind of got this circle, like a half semicircle around this part, and it's got 3 lines in there. And then it sort of like blends into the rest of the book. So once you've got your positioning right, you're going to go back in with your Dresden tool, and we're just going to blend in sort of like the outer bits of this circle, just so that they're not as prominent. So you can see I'm just pulling it down with the tiniest little bit of water on my Dresden tool, like so. Just a few extra lines just around the eyelids. And again, it's not too noticeable, but once we start shading, it will be. Stipple over that area. Next, we're going to roll some of the fondant, the brown fondant out, quite thin. And I'm just straightening it off with my knife. So it doesn't have to be too neat, because again, it's a very old book. But you kind of want it to be roughly the same width all the way along. And then this bit we're just going to wrap around the bit that we've just done. And we're going to cut off at a bit of an angle towards the edge of the book. So this is going to be where they have the, I guess it's like a lock or a fastener to shut the book to keep it closed. So going back in and just chopping off at an angle, opening it up a bit. Now I'm going in with a really small ball tool and I'm putting these in clusters of 3 all the way around. And then once you've done these in clusters of 3, you're going to go back in with your scriber needle. I'm going to separate all of these groups of 3 all the way around. So I've gone in from the inner circle first and then going back over from the outer circle, just so that I've got that solid line going all the way from one side to the other. So next, the book's got like these stitches that are on there. So I've rolled out some sausages of fondant. We're going to put that on the book in sort of like not a wiggly line, but not straight either. And then we're going to go in with the scriber needle, pushing it down at the sides because we want it to be a bit lumpy and a bit misshapen. You're going to go in with the scriber needle and you're just going to draw a line through the middle of these stitches, I think they are. I'm going to go back in and add some extra pieces. So one that's coming in from the eye and joining up to the one that we've got. I have got a picture of this book up whilst I'm making this, just so I can sort of like visualise where these things would be on the actual book. Trying to get it as near as possible as I can do to that. You don't have to blend these joins in or anything like that. It is stitches, so it's quite rough. Just going to go in with the scriber needle, and then you can go in with the Dresden tool as well, and then just pinch it back together once you've gone over that. And then it's also got these bits that sort of come down from the sort of like centre of the book as well. Now you can take it as near to the actual book as you want to, or as far. It doesn't have to be an exact replica. And then we're just going to draw another wiggly line joining these 2 together, and then back to down to the front of the book. And again, the same methods as before. So it didn't take me too long to do this cake. I would say from start to finish, It probably took me an hour to decorate and to paint. Probably took me another, I would say, 10 minutes to ganache and fill the cakes. It is a fairly simple cake to do. I think because it's supposed to be old, it doesn't have to be as neat as what, something would need to be with sharp edges. So it has this plait that sort of goes down the side of the book. So I've got 3 pieces of fondant and I'm just wrapping one piece over the other as you would do with a normal hair plait. And I think this is like the clasp of the book, so it's what keeps it shut. And then we're just going to trim off the excess and pop that to one side. And then for the lock, we're going to cut sort of like this rectangle shape. And then in the rectangle shape, there's sort of like a long oval circle coming from one side to the other. And then that seems to be filled with another piece of fondant. And then I'm just going to neaten the sides up again. And then it's got a hole in, which is then got an extra piece of fondant in the middle. And then it's got sort of like these little lines that go above and below. And so there's the clasp for the book. So next we're going to go ahead and cut another piece of fondant. This bit's quite thin, and this is just going to be the bit that wraps around the book on the bottom that's attached to the board, so it kind of looks like the book is sat on the board. So I've just put a little bit of water around the edge of the book, and I'm just taking the fondant, and you can see I'm just pushing it into place, and we're going to do this all the way around. Now I've covered the board in some white fondant, and I've given it a bit of movement just by putting some what's the word now, not ripples, but to make it look like almost fabric is laid down on top of the book, on top of the board, and the book is resting on that. And so you're just going to wrap this around the cake and just making sure that you push it in so you can't actually see any of the base between the side of the book, and I'm just using the knife just to push that in and straighten up that line a little bit. Again, it doesn't have to be too neat, we just kind of want it to sort of like match the rest of the book really. We're going to put our clasp on, and I've left it overhanging a little bit, and then we're going to put our plait on as well, like so. For the colour of the actual pages, I've got some autumn leaf in the gel colours, and I'm just whacking a load on, so making sure it's really quite dark, and I'm just adding water to mix it all in, and then I'm going back in with a kitchen towel and I'm just wiping off the excess. And so you can see that this is sort of like giving an extra dimension to the book. It's making the pages look more realistic and more old. So now I'm going to start painting the book. So this is just a mixture of some dust. So this is just a brown dust with a bit of black in there. And I've mixed this with dipping solution, but you could use lemon juice if you really wanted to. If the cake needed to be halal, then I would use lemon juice, or you could just mix some of the gel colours with a little bit of water. The good thing about mixing with the dipping solution is it does dry really quickly, so if you wanted to go ahead and sort of get the cake out of the way and not have to leave it to dry for a couple of hours, it's really good in that sense. So what I'm doing is I'm building up the colours. I'm adding a little bit of colour, letting it dry a little bit, and then going back over with some dark darker colours. So this is just the brown on its own as it stands at the minute, and when I go back in it will be with the brown mixed with a little bit of black. and it'll be a bit of a thicker consistency. We want the book to look quite patchy. We don't want it to be all one flat flush colour. We want the creases to be a lot darker than the larger patches in the book. And it's just about putting the paint on. I do like it when you dab the brush, because I feel like it also adds to that kind of old leathery texture. And you don't see any brush strokes as you would do sometimes painting back and forth. So you can see I'm just sort of dabbing my brush on and wiggling it about and building up that colour. Painting didn't take that long at all. I probably could have spent a little bit longer on doing it, to be honest. But I'm quite happy with how it turned out. It did look like quite an old book. I'll concentrate more of the darker colours in the creases, in the joins of the different parts of the book to one another. And then what I've also done is I've just added a bit of sort of like a autumn leaf, which is a bit more of a yellowy tone, to the mix that I've got at the minute, and just putting that over some of the brown, just to again bring out a little bit more of a depth. So you can see I'm going in here with the darker mixture and just sort of bringing it down. Now if I was painting this with gel colours rather than the dipping solution and just using the gel colours and the water, I would use a similar technique as what I have done with the pages, where I would have some kitchen roll and I would just dab off some excess whilst I was building up the colour. Now to blend in that darker colour with the lighter colour in the middle, I've just literally just added a bit more dipping solution to the actual colour that I've got. And that way it's making it a bit more watery towards the middle of that open space there. And you're just going to go ahead and do this effect over the whole of the book. The only bits that are a different colour is the parts where the, I'm going to call it the holes in the snake. So where we made that pattern with the snake, the holes are actually a dark, very, very dark brown, almost black colour. And then everything else on the book that's not brown is all silver. And I did paint over some of the areas that needed to be silver, just because I felt it gave it more of a sort of like an oldie silver look. So I'm just building up the colour and painting over the stitches in sort of more of a yellowy brown rather than the chestnutty brown. Concentrating a lot of dark colour through the creases of the eye and the eyelid. And then the darker colour, like I said, in between the I keep wanting to call it a snail, in the snake there, and just around the corners as well with the darker colour. And then just building up some more patchiness on the actual book itself. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask down below or message me on Instagram or Facebook. You can also feel free to join Cake Nation Academy, which is a group on Facebook as well. So for the silver, I've used Squire's Kitchen Silver, again mixed with a bit of dipping solution, and I'm just going ahead and painting the snakes, the snake along the side of the book, this bit around the eye. We're going to do the lock and the braid as well. Now again with the silver, I'm not looking for it to be perfect. Patchy is great because it just adds to the overall look of the book being quite old. So here I've got some white dust and I'm just popping it on with a fan brush, and I'm just brushing that over, and it's just going to help pick up the different textures that's in the book. And you do have to wait for it to be dry to be able to do this. So don't attempt to do it when it's wet, because it'll just clump together and it won't look nice at all. So now I've got some royal icing and I've just mixed it with a bit of autumn leaf dust, and I'm just going to go ahead and pipe in these stitches. Now this could have done with being a little bit thicker, but I made do with what I'd already made and I'd already started. So for this we're going to go over all of the stitches that's on the front of the book, and then we are also going to create an arch around every finger that's on the side. Now it was impossible for me to film the arches on the side of the book and pipe and lift the cake at the same time, as well as holding the phone to film it. So I have only filmed the piping of what's on the top of the book, but it is very similar. It's just around the fingers on the side of the book. So if you wanted to wait for the royal icing to dry a little bit, you could do, and then you could go ahead and just add some dust over the top of it just to make it a bit more mucky. But my kids were super eager to cut into the cake. They'd been waiting for it all day. So we didn't bother with the dusting. And I think it looked quite cool just the way that it was. That kind of brought the stitches, made them stand out a little bit. So here's the finished book. I've taken some photos just to show you the close-ups of sort of like some of the other details on the cake. So we've got the pages along the bottom and around the sides. We've got the braid that you can see there that's painted, the eye, and then here's the cutting of the cake. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to share, guys, and subscribe. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, please click the links on the screen now. Thanks for watching.